Hello, good morning, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Alex. I'm a founding partner of VIDA. It's a pleasure to host you today on this webinar. We are just going to give a couple more minutes as we have a number of people now who are trickling in. And in just a couple of minutes, we will kick off the webinar. Thank you all for your patience.
And by the way, I take the opportunity to introduce myself as well. I am Thomas. I am a partner at a Portuguese law firm called CCA Law. And I am what you can call an expert on immigration and golden visa matters. And that's why VIDA Fund were kind enough, and Alex were kind enough to ask me. I look in the audience and I see some names of people that I know. So looking forward to doing this webinar.
Perfect. I think for the sake of time and respecting everyone who actually showed up on time, what we can do is we can actually kick off this webinar. So once again, welcome everyone to this webinar. We're very happy to have you join us. Again, some people may join. We'll probably be joining in the next few minutes, but we'll get this kicked off. So the idea here is to do a presentation about the Portuguese Golden Visa. As I mentioned briefly, previously, my name is Alex. I'm a founding partner of VIDA Capital, which is an investment fund that is eligible for Golden Visa that focuses on hospitality. And we have with us here Tomas Teixeira, who's a partner at CCA Law Firm. It's one of the most reputable law firms in Portugal. I think they have over 100 lawyers working in the law firm. And so Tomas is in charge of a number of departments there, including immigration. So he's a specialist in that field. And so the format that we've decided to do for today to keep things light and interactive is that we're going to start having a bit of a Q&A between myself and Thomas with specific questions around the Golden Visa program to try and answer some frequent questions that people often asked us from the mouth of an expert. And then from there, we'll follow this with a very short, brief presentation on VIDA, which is an investment fund that qualifies for Golden Visa purposes. And after that, we will open the floor for questions. So my suggestion is if anyone has questions at any point during the presentation or the webinar, my recommendation would be to try and put those questions inside the Zoom, which you can do through the little Q&A option on the bottom right side of your screen. If you click on this, you have the option to open and put any questions there. This way, we'll do our best at the end to have a bit of time to review some of these questions and be able to clarify any doubts or queries that anyone may have. So with that, kicking off the webinar. So Thomas, welcome. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you very much, Alex.
You're busy at a big conference in France, so thank you for making the time even there for us.
My pleasure.
So basically, I have a few questions that I'd like to ask you. The first one is, can you explain just in a nutshell, what is the Golden Visa? What's the program about?
Okay, so the Golden Visa, which is a marketing name for the program, is a residency-by-investment visa, and a residency-by-investment program that has been around since 2012 in Portugal. Basically, through the investment in a qualifying route that can be funds or that can be donations, you get a visa that allows you to live in Portugal, to work in Portugal, that gives you access to education in Portugal, gives you access to healthcare in Portugal, and most importantly, I believe for the audience that we have, that starts a path towards Portuguese citizenship. So 5 years after you do the application for the visa, online application for the visa, you are entitled to apply for a Portuguese passport. It's not mandatory, but you are entitled to do that. And with that, you gain Portuguese citizenship, which is European citizenship. All of this is achieved, and this is probably the main difference between the Portuguese program versus other programs. But all of this is achieved through spending 7 days a year or 14 days every 2 years in Portugal. So these are the stay requirements. So this means that you do not need to move, you do not need to change anything in your life by getting the Golden Visa. And in basic terms, you need to spend a holiday every year in Portugal, and with that, you are entitled to apply for Portuguese citizenship in the future. So, I mean, in a very summarized way, this is the Golden Visa program. Alex, I think you are muted.
Thank you. That answers a little bit my second question, which was around what are the benefits of the Golden Visa. It's ultimately a path to residency and citizenship. In terms of the requirements, what are the requirements that one needs to comply with in order to obtain the Golden Visa?
Okay, so the first thing is to do a qualifying investment. I mean, for the sake of the webinar, and in terms of success, I would say that 99.5% of our clients go for the fund route and follow the fund route. So the first thing you have to do is to get a qualifying investment and to find a qualifying investment. The second thing you have to do is to gather several documents in the country where you are a national or a resident. And that those documents need to include your family. So a very important point to make here, and Alex, I don't know if you'll touch on family members later on. You will, right? So probably I don't go there now. But basically, you have to do a qualifying investment on the one hand. You need to comply with the requirements in terms of documentation on the other, which are basically having a clean criminal record and then showing the documents that prove that your children are your children, which is a birth certificate proving that you are married to your spouse or partner, which is a marriage certificate, or that you have a stable union with that person. And with that, we apply for the Golden Visa. Everything is done initially online. And then the process includes a visit to Portugal to do biometrics, and then you have to wait for the card to be issued.
Perfect. So next question. So you mentioned briefly, so family members. Can you explain, for example, if I'm a main investor, right, and I put 500,000 euro investment in the fund, I'm able to obtain the Golden Visa. Who else can also participate in the program on the basis of my investment as a main investor?
Okay, so partners, wife or spouse, children under 18, children over 18 as long as they remain independent from the parents, and this means that they have to continue to study, and this means that they have to remain unmarried during the entire duration of the Golden Visa program, because marriage is automatic emancipation. Parents over 65 and in-laws over 65 as well. One may include parents under 65, but the main applicant needs to show that the parents are financially dependent on the main applicant. So it's the 65-year mark is a presumption that we can go around by proving that parents are dependent. But in basic terms, with one investment, you can include your entire family upwards and downwards.
Great. Next question. In terms of the process, so from the time of investment or application until the time that I can actually apply and get my passport, right? The citizenship, which tends to be the end goal for a lot of investors. What's the timeline there to be able to apply for the citizenship?
Okay, so the timeline is basically 5 years counted from the online submission of the visa. Okay, this is the first step we do. Is after you complete the investment and you do all the work that needs to be done beforehand, we do an online submission of the visa, including the documents for the investment and the documents for the family members and the main investor. The deadline for citizenship is counted from the date that we do that online submission. And this is a recent change in the law that entered into force in 2024, and it was a complete game changer for the program. You may hear by doing research online that the Golden Visa program struggled and is struggling with some delays. But again, 99.9% of our clients apply for the Golden Visa not with the objective of moving, or not because they need actually the visa. They apply for the visa because they want the passport. And the fact that the 5 years start from the online submission is completely a game changer, because it allows clients not to suffer with the delays that sometimes exist with the immigration authorities in Portugal, although that is improving as well, and get the passport 5 years after they apply. In terms of the requirements for citizenship, it's having a 5-year visa. The Golden Visa would be that. Basically, the applicants will have to speak the A2 level of Portuguese, which is fairly basic Portuguese. And you can do online courses that you get a certificate, you are approved, and you show that to the immigration authorities, and that is enough for you to file for your citizenship application. So in a very summarized way, it's that. Now, another question that people do a lot is, what's the difference between the Golden Visa and the Portuguese passport? And the difference is that the Golden Visa gives you rights in Portugal. Portuguese passport gives you rights in all countries of the EU. So basically, to give an example, if tomorrow I want to move to Spain with my daughters and my wife, I can do so by renting a property, doing a registration in the municipality of Madrid, let's say, and then I move there. My children are entitled to go to school, to do everything that a Spanish citizen can do. So that's the main difference. A passport gives you flexibility applicable to the entire Europe in terms of living there. But with the Golden Visa, you can move around without any problems in Europe as well.
Perfect. Thank you for that. And so you've actually covered a few different questions. So maybe the last question that we'll have maybe for this part, or maybe last two questions, I think are both relevant. Additional costs. So when people are considering about a Golden Visa, we're talking about a 500,000 euro investment. On top of a 500,000 euro investment, typically, what are the different types of costs that people need to consider in order to actually complete this process?
Lawyers' fees, unfortunately, those exist. We need to make a living as well. I know people hate paying fees, but it's life. So you have those. And typically, lawyers apply fixed fees always. So there are no hourly rates involved. I mean, I never heard of any lawyer doing that. So fixed fees for lawyers, and those are inclusive for all the family. Then you have official costs that you have to pay to the government. And those are not per family, are per person. They are around 13,000 euros in 5 years per person. I tend to say that's one of the golden parts of the Golden Visa, because the Golden Visa is, in terms of fees, an expensive visa. Then you always have to account with other expenses related with traveling and things like that. But other than that, I think that these are the expenses. So lawyers' fees, official costs payable to the government, and the costs to cover all the trips that you'll have to do during the 5 years to comply with the state requirements. So those are the costs.
Thank you. And maybe a last question before we move to the quick presentation and then back to more questions. In terms of, oftentimes we get asked, how long is this program going to be valid for? And in case that there are any changes that happen, as we have seen in the past, what would happen with someone's application if they, let's say, invest today, for example?
So in terms of duration of the program, the program has been around since 2012. It struggled in 2023, but it was maintained, limited and maintained. So we do not foresee any changes to the program in the near future, although the EU tends not to be very supportive of Golden Visa programs that exist around Europe. So the sooner one applies, the better, because you secure your rights if you do the application. So you are grandfathered into the program. This was your second part of the question, Alex. And basically, when you apply, the various changes that, I mean, when you apply, you are grandfathered. The rules applicable on that day will be the rules applicable during the 5 years of your Golden Visa program. And this is something that we know because the law is not retroactive. It's something that you learn on the first year of law, but also in practical terms, because we tested that with all the changes that the program had. And we know that the immigration authorities follow this rule. So the old rules are applicable to those that had investments done under the old rules, and the new rules apply to those that do it with the new rules. So to be very clear, you do the application today and you are grandfathered for 5 years. So if the program ends, that does not affect you. It only affects those that want to join.
Perfect. Great. So thank you very much, Thomas, for this first part. With that, what we're going to do is we're going to move quickly to a short presentation by VIDA, where we're going to talk about a qualified investment for Golden Visa purposes. And then we'll move back to some questions. So I already see that some people have been putting already a few questions in the Q&A, so that's great. If you have additional questions, please feel free to add them in here, and we'll do our best to try and tackle at least a few of those after the presentation. Thomas, you can see my screen? Yeah, perfect. Great. So VIDA Capital is a hospitality turnaround fund, meaning that our focus is looking at existing operating hotels that we can buy and turn around here in Portugal. So the key benefits, let's say, with our investment strategy, let's say, is that there's a big focus on minimization of risk. The key focus, a lot of our investors are, of course, interested in making a return, but the key focus for most of our investors is really about protection of their principal. They want to make sure they're not going to lose money. And so everything around what we're doing is really focused on minimizing risk. And we do this through always buying asset backed, so always having the hotel to back up all the investment. We always buy already built hotels. The refurbishment process that we do is quite light. And then we basically are able to stabilize and exit these hotels for a significant premium. The other thing is that we're a very boutique approach, so we like to offer a very kind of very tailored approach to the types of investments and service that we offer, and legacy driven in the sense that we kind of see ourselves as almost like an extension of a family office of our investors, where we're in very, very close contact with our investors. We help them with the entire process with a strong team here in-house who kind of handholds every investor through the process to make things as easy and seamless as possible. Now, in a nutshell, VIDA is an investment that is over the course of a 6.5 year cycle. In terms of return, as we mentioned before, so there's a minimum investment required in order to qualify for Golden Visa, which is of 500,000 euros. It is Golden Visa eligible. And the return, which we're going to see a bit more in detail, the goal basically is during the term of the 6.5 years to be able to double the investment over the course of the 6.5 years, meaning to be able to get 1 million back from that investment. So 500 back of principal plus an additional 500 of capital gains. These are some of the photos of the hotels that we currently have acquired turnarounds. Now, very briefly about Portugal. Now, again, I know that probably some of you have more or less knowledge of Portugal, but in a nutshell, some of the highlight things maybe that are very relevant to a lot of our investors are that it's, of course, a member of the European Union. Lisbon is the second sunniest capital in Europe after Malta, so we get a lot of sunlight, a lot of sun hours here. There's a very high quality of life. It's ranked as one of the top countries to retire. The Portuguese passport is the third strongest passport in the world. Portugal is always one of the top 10 safest countries in the world. It's currently seventh safest country in the world. And there's still a lot of English speaking, so it's very easy to move around, and we're seeing a lot of still very affordable cost of living here for an international scale. A little bit about hospitality. Basically, Portugal has been a landmark of hospitality in Europe. It has been one of the most resilient countries of all of Europe to get back to pre-COVID-19 numbers. Since then has been able to significantly increase, and it's there's constantly more and more demand, and we can see that with a lot of demand coming from not only Europe, but also a lot from outside of Europe, including the US as a key market. And we're going to look into this in a bit more detail. Now, a little bit more about VIDA. The VIDA business opportunity for us is really focused on three main axes, or three business drivers, let's say. The first thing is that we're looking at a decentralized hospitality market. This means that Portugal is filled with hotels that are mostly family run, and that are mostly run by families who own one single hotel. So it's very different to a lot of markets where you have things that are very, let's say, centralized or very consolidated, let's say under like large funds and things like this. Here we have a lot of, let's say, small owners that own one hotel and that tend to not have the ability to really be able to take things forward because the next generation is not able, not willing to take over, etc. And so it creates a lot of supply of good opportunities that don't really have a good legacy to take things forward. The other thing is that we're seeing a huge increase of US demand, US outbound demand into Portugal for tourism, for buying properties, for living, for spending time. And so we'll get into this a little bit more in detail. And the last thing is that we see a very big market in the service department branded residence space, which is a bit different from a lot of what we see. For example, with hotels or Airbnbs, specifically with service departments. So the comfort of a house with all the services of a hotel, basically. And so our strategy is really looking into taking advantage of the macroeconomic context of having this supply of properties that are of hotels that have a lot of potential but are not properly operated, for us to take those over, revamp them, make them fit into very high grade international standards, fitting, for example, demands of US clients, but also from a lot of different parts of the world, being able to get a good operating yield from those during that time under a service department, and then having the exit under that model that allows for us to be able to really maximize the return. In terms of decentralized market, here you can see, for example, a bit of the market share between 2019 to 2020 to 2024, the shift from independent branded hotels, to branded hotels. So you can see that branded hotels are starting to really take a lot more focus in Portugal because there's been a big opportunity. And so now is a time that people are actually really looking into building that. And what we're actually seeing is that a lot of international groups, as you can see on the bottom right here, have announced already their pipeline. And Portugal, for a lot of these groups, including like Marriott, Hyatt, is one of the top countries of all of Europe where they have the biggest expansion plan, where they currently have the least presence. So it means that there's a real opportunity for people like us, for funds like us, to be able to build hotels that fit the needs of such players and being able to help these large groups grow their portfolios here in Portugal. And then you can see that the investment growth in the Portuguese hospitality sector is growing significantly, especially in the last few years after COVID. And here you can see that the origin of the owners of hotels here tends to be very domestic. It's very local, 88%, and that the majority of the owners of those hotels are private, right? So we're talking about an individual, a family that owns like a single or maybe two hotels. This is a lot of the reality that we're seeing here in Portugal. A bit more information about the US. I'm not going to get too much in detail here, but what you can see is that the US is a highly growing segment here. I think a very good, interesting one is the international guest arrivals by country. You can see, so this is growth over 2 years, the last 2 years. You can see, for example, the different percentages of growth of all the different countries, and you have the US here with 35%, which is the highest, the number one highest growing market, actually coming and basically enjoying tourism services in Portugal. What you can also see here is that there's a significant, of course, contribution of US investment share into the Portuguese Golden Visa. So that is happening in parallel. So you can see that basically a few years ago, the US was not even top 10. We're talking about 4 years ago, not even top 10 of demanders of Golden Visa. In 2023, we're already at 20%, which is already a fifth of all Golden Visas. 2024, the numbers have not yet been released, but the expectation is that it is the first country demander of Golden Visa now in Portugal. So the largest demander of any other country in the world. And then here you can see again the change in number of foreign tourists, again, US being a significantly higher than other countries, as you can see here. And then a little bit about service apartments. So service apartments for us really is this kind of sweet spot middle ground between hotels and Airbnbs. Hotels tend to be good, but they're often soulless. They don't have a lot of living area or comfort, but they have a lot of services and reliability. And then you have the Airbnbs, which have more space, often more affordable, but then tend to have no services, no standardized services, no standardized design, or amenities, oftentimes no security. And so the middle ground is kind of the comfort of these apartments or homes, but with all the services of a hotel, basically. And this is really the key focus. And it also happens to be one of the fastest growing segments in hospitality, not just in Portugal, but also across Europe and the rest of the world. And this is a little bit of information about the branded residence. Again, we'll be more than happy to send this deck to everyone. For the sake of time, maybe I'll kind of zip through it a little bit. What this is really explaining is that currently branded residence and apart hotel is the segment that most of the large hotel groups are dedicating most of their resources towards. And this is the segment that they are trying to scale as much as possible. And the main reason is that there's significantly higher demand for that than other segments of tourism. And on top of this, it's also shown to be one of the most resilient ones. When we saw COVID and kind of economic downturns, of course, business travel, things like this tend to slow down. But these are actually segments that we've seen that actually are able to not only maintain, but keep on growing even in economic downturns. So this is why we're seeing a lot of focus there. And these are some of the top developments and developers that we are seeing in Portugal. So you may know some of these brands here. And when asked basically what are the top second house destinations for US-based clients, after the US for a second home, Portugal is basically number 2 for US-based clients. So again, showing a lot of interest that the Portugal has been able to receive from the US. So again, to summarize, the opportunities we're buying distressed or underperforming assets here from bankruptcies, litigations, non-performing portfolios, from families here for significant discounts. We revamp them, we change them, we often move them into either our brand called Masana or working with other international groups such as Hyatt or different brands such as Accor, Hyatt, Marriott. We then run the hotels for a number of years. And once they're stabilized and we've been able to get good profit from them, we then exit them. So this is a little bit the process again. Start by investment, refurbishment, the repositioning, our sustainability output on the projects. We then have operational excellence doing usually 2 to 3 years. And then we're looking at the divestment period where we will sell all the hotels before the exit. Now, interesting part for investors, of course, this is more about the investment and the return. So here you can see a cash flow simulation on behalf of the investor. So as we mentioned, there's an initial 500,000 euro that is required in order to initiate the process. This is how we start, and then with that, we get the application to the Golden Visa. Typically, the first 2 years are years that we're making the investment. On top of completing the investments, we're revamping the hotels and soft opening them. Then from there, from 2027, we're looking at an annual dividend that's paid once a year of 20,000 euros. These come from profits that are generated from the hotels, right? So the portfolio of hotels is allowing the fund to have profits. We use that to distribute proceeds to the investors. We're talking about a 20,000 payment each year. So that's 100,000 in total. And then at the liquidation, we return initially the 500,000 initially invested, plus an additional gain of 400,000. The idea is to total the 1 million euros, 500 back, plus 500 of actual profits. A little example. So currently, this current fund that is open is VIDA 2. We've already closed the first fund, which this is some information about the deployment of the first fund. So this is a specific asset, for example, that we have acquired. It's a specific company, hospitality company that we have bought. So what you can see is basically, this is a beautiful beachfront. It has more than 50 villas in the Algarve, which is the southern coast of Portugal, which is now having direct flights even to New York. We're able to buy a beautiful resort there that was very underperforming, to say the least, and we're able to get it for a significant discount. We then revamped this hotel, and what you can see is it was selling at an average price per night of 100 euros. Within a year, we moved it to 270 last year on average, and this year we're going to have it upwards of 350. All this with a quite light refurbishment, which we'll see a bit more in detail. And so not only are we able to increase the average daily rates that we're selling it at, but also we have to have the assets valued every quarter for the purpose of reporting on the NAV or on the performance of the fund to investors. And since we have acquired it in 2023, we have already received an appreciation of 25% compared to all the investment that we've made. So that means that we've already increased the property by a fourth of it, of everything that we've put in case that we were to sell it today. So showing that, again, the process of refurbishment, of changing the operation, et cetera, that we've been doing has been able to create significant value. And then the target IRR for this asset is a 22% IRR, annual rate of return, internal rate of return, which we're currently significantly above target, as our current operation has been 29% above our budget, above target. And here you can see a little bit. So we completed the phase one, we did a soft opening, which we're able to get great profits from. And now we're completing the phase two refurbishment, and then Masana will open fully in 3 weeks from now. So very excited. I was actually there yesterday. It's looking great. So we're very excited about this. And then you can see a little bit of before and after. We like to show this because we're not doing any, we're doing renovations, of course, refurbishment, but we're not doing any structural change. We're not doing any permitting. The type of work we're doing, it's more of a facelift makeup. This is really the key focus. And the reason why we do this is because we want to minimize work. We don't want to put too much risk in putting a lot of money and a lot of process into refurbishing everything, so we keep it very light. And as you can see so far, the reviews even on this phase one soft opening have been very positive, with 9.4 on Expedia, 9.2 on Booking, and of course other OTAs that we haven't put in here. There's a little bit of information on our pipeline. We're currently on 4 deals that are very advanced negotiations, which we expect to close at least 2 additional ones this year, and the rest will be in 2026. Quick summary of VIDA 1, our last fund. So we've raised a total of close to 22 million euros in the first fund. We have over 50 investors that have applied, that have invested in the fund. Currently, we have 25% of that fund that's already deployed. The rest will be deployed between this year and next year. We have over 100 Golden Visa applications that have been submitted through the first fund. And currently, the performance is at 30% above target, above our budget. And the current NAV calculation, or the current total asset value of the fund versus the capital that was invested, is at 13% above. So we're seeing that we're already able to significantly increase the value of all the assets here. Quick summary here. Basically, we are here at VIDA. We have hired Deloitte to be our auditor. We have Stag, who's a regulated fund manager. We are basically under the scrutiny, let's say, of the regulated fund manager, who's under the scrutiny of the regulator here. We have CCA, who's our main partner on the tax and legal, but also on all of the deals basically that we're doing and a lot of the immigration. And finally, Custodian Bank, which is Millennium BCP, which is the largest private bank here in Portugal. There's a little bit of information about our track record. We've worked in part with a lot of different large international hospitality groups and more local ones as well. We've had experience in successfully turning around over 150 hotels, out of which 20 are in Portugal, with the same process, taking existing operating underperforming hotels and repositioning them. A lot of experience in managing funds as well, managing a lot of capital, over 1.7 billion euros, maybe close to $2 billion worth of capital that's been raised and managed, with currently 18 funds under management under a fund management team. So a lot of experience both on the private equity deal side, but also on the hospitality management side. And very briefly, so my focus is more on the hospitality turnaround side. This is really my key focus. Maria, my business partner, she's an M&A tax lawyer originally, then moved into investment banking. She's worked with very large law firms and banks, mostly in London. She then also set up a yield enhancement fund with the ex-MD from Goldman, which was a very successful fund. She since then has done a number of other businesses, a bit of a serial entrepreneur. In VIDA, she's really in charge of everything to do with tax, legal, and structuring. Then we have Jose Covas, our Chief Investment Officer. He has over 30 years of experience in valuations in hospitality in Spain and Portugal. So through him, we have a lot of access to deal flow that is distressed or underperforming in Portugal. And so we get a lot of supply of deals through him. Briefly, also a hospitality management team, ex-BCG, Starwood, Marriott, now basically taking care of all of the operation of our hotels. They have worked with some of the most noteworthy, let's say, hotels in Portugal. For those who have traveled here, you may know some of these here. And then our executive management team. So again, extensive experience in doing fund management, compliance, running operations of funds. Very quickly on taxation. So the fund is actually exempt of taxes in terms of at the fund level and as well for investors. So for any investor who's investing in the fund and is not a permanent resident of Portugal, meaning most investors who remain residents in their countries, there's a tax exemption on the fund proceeds. So they will not be liable to pay any taxes in Portugal. They may be liable to pay taxes in their home country, and that's something to be considered, but there will be no taxes in Portugal. Very quickly on sustainability, we think we're doing a few things right. The first thing is we're giving a second life to existing operating hotels. So we're talking about something that's already been built, that's already here, but that's not utilized or very underutilized. So we're giving a second life, upcycling ultimately these projects. The second thing is we're always looking at maximizing the integration of renewable energy sources. And lastly, the two last points are similar. It's really about local sourcing. So all the furniture, so we do a lot of art in our projects. All of that art is done by local artists. And the furniture that we design is all crafted in Portugal, designed in Portugal, and actually crafted in Portugal. And everything that we need for the operation is always very, very locally sourced. So whether that's products for maintenance, products for food and beverage, all of that basically is always a big, big focus on trying to be as local as possible. And then there's a long appendix, which I think is not relevant for the purposes of this specific webinar. So with that, I'm going to stop the presentation. So I would like to thank you all, first of all, for your patience. It's a bit of a hefty deck and content, so thank you for bearing with us. And now, so I see that we already have a few questions. So perhaps what we'll do is we can start maybe taking a few questions, if that's okay with you also, Thomas. And we can start kind of going back and forth on some of these questions. So we have a first question, which is, I'm interested in a property priced at 1 million euros. If I raise the necessary funds through investors, would I qualify for the Portuguese residency-by-investment visa? Maybe Thomas, would you like to take that?
Yes. No. Real estate, sorry. Real estate is off the table. So one cannot do a real estate investment and qualify for the Golden Visa. So the existing routes are venture capital funds, donations, and investment in companies. Other than that, real estate is off the table, unfortunately. It is.
Perfect. Thank you for that. The next question we have is, when you say partners, do you have to be married, or a couple who isn't married yet qualifies?
A couple that isn't married may qualify, but we need to show stable union. Basically, clients need to have, or investors need to have, joint bank accounts, a lease together, own a property together, and we need to show that track record to the immigration authorities. With that, one could apply without being married, but ideally we need to show something legal. And I have married, actually, I have made several clients get married because of these requirements. No, but you don't need to do that. So if we can prove and have this track record, we're fine.
Perfect. Thank you. There's another question as well, which is 500,000 euro plus the only option for Golden Visa? Are there other options, cheaper options?
Yes, there is one cheaper option, which is the donation route, which is 250,000 euros to be invested in the recovery of arts, Portuguese patrimony, historical patrimony, or in certain foundations that are eligible for Golden Visa. So you have a lower ticket. The downside of that is the fact that it is a donation, so it is money that you give, and there is no return on that money.
Thank you for that. So we are also seeing, okay, I'm seeing there's a lot of questions on the chat as well. Okay, let's try and stick to questions on the Q&A as much as possible, please. But just to kind of go through these a little bit more. So there's someone who's talking about the fact that according to a link that they have found, that the processing times are very long, above 3 years. Is there a movement on that front? Why is it taking so long? Is there anything to be done to accelerate those delays? a significant fraction ends up being suing the government because of delays. Can you say something about the lawsuits?
Okay, so yes, I mean, there is I briefly touched that point. There is an historic backlog that started with COVID, that grew with the success of the program and with the fact that the immigration authorities in Portugal suffered a lot of changes. So we have a new entity now, and the backlog grew substantially. The point to make here is the fact that the change of law now means that citizenship starts not when the visa is issued, but when the visa is filed. And that is a very important point for those that do not want to move to Portugal and do not need the visa with urgency. But I mean, there is a backlog, and today people have waiting times of 24 and or a little bit more months to get the visas issued.
Thank you.
Just to finalize, what we are seeing is that the immigration authorities are effectively trying. They are much more cooperative than they were before. They are communicating much more, and we are seeing improvements. In any case, we have, for several of our clients, filed injunctions against the immigration authorities in cases that the delays were not acceptable. So to finalize the question, are there any means for us to tackle or fight the delays? Yes, we have this injunction. We have filed over 100 of these, and we won more than around 85% of them. And the ones that we lost was not because of the grounds, was because of a technicality. So yes, there are means to answer and fight this.
Perfect. Thank you for that. How is the gain taxed after 5 years? So again, we mentioned that briefly, but after the 5 years, actually all of the gains, whether they are basically the dividends that are paid annually or the capital gains, they're exempt of taxes. So there is actually no taxation on that amount. This comes free of taxes from Portuguese side. Next question. It's a lot of questions. It's good. People are curious with different things. So how can you project 100% return in 7 years? So it's very simple. The way that this is done is that 100% a year over the course of the 6.5 years gives us approximately a 12% IRR. This means that basically the way that the business works is that investors are investing money with us. With that money, we're buying hotels. The hotels that we're typically buying are distressed or underperforming, meaning we're buying hotels usually at around 30% discount from market value. Let's say between 20 and 40, right? We do this by buying from litigations, bankruptcies, etc. So we buy something already significantly lower value than what it was worth in that state. We then put a little bit of money, well, some investment, let's say, to make the hotel better. We change the brand, we change the operation, we change all the design. We have a lot of experience in doing that. And so immediately after doing that, we're able to create significantly higher value than what it was worth at market value because the asset is much, much better at that time, right? So already there's a significant value created. After that, we're running the hotel for a number of years, which you're usually getting between 6 to 8% operating yield on average each year during the life of the hold of the assets of the companies. So that's, money that's coming in each year, which we use part of it to pay dividends. The rest stays and builds up there. And then at the end, we sell the entire asset, which has significantly appreciated. And we also sell, of course, the operating company, which has the exclusive rights of management of these hotels, which was bought at almost no value because it was often bought either losing money or barely making any money. Let's say that was worth, let's say, maybe making 50,000 of profit or break even at the time we bought it a year. Now making, let's say, 2 million euros a year of EBITDA, of profit, which means that the discounted cash flow valuation exercise that's done over that value of that operation, and that's able to create, again, a significant appreciation of the value of the company there. So the combination of these three things is basically our business model and how we're able to get to this level of return. Does the fund have any debt? Or are you planning to borrow fund investment? So it's a great question. The fund itself has no debt, it's only equity. And at the SPV level, meaning at the investment level, we go up to a maximum of 50% LTV, meaning we get to maximum of 50% loan to value, 50% from the bank, and 50% from the equity of the fund, basically. I'm going to maybe switch a little bit to the other side because we have a number of questions there as well, just to be fair with those who asked questions first. About the recording of the webinar, absolutely, we'll be happy to share a recording with anyone who would like it. In terms of lawyer fees, did you say the fees are per person over 5 years? So again, my recommendation for anyone who has very specific questions about fees for lawyers would be to reach out to us or to Thomas, to CCA, either way, and we're happy to put you in touch with them. I think it's a bit of a case by case depending on size of family, different things like this. So I'm not sure if this is the best format to give that. But typically when thinking of fees, my suggestion would be to think of, you have to think of, there's an investment of 500,000. This is the only amount of money that we actually receive and we manage on your behalf. So the returns that we can provide are only on the basis of that amount. Additionally to this, you will need to pay government fees, which are fees that you pay to the government for the application of the Golden Visa. And these are fees that tend to be paid over the course of the 5 years. It's not everything up front. And then on top of that, you pay a certain amount to the legal representative to help you and your family basically through all this process. To be fair, compared to international standards and certainly what we can see in the US, Portugal is a completely different market from a cost standpoint. And so the legal fees represent usually less than what the application and government fees tend to represent typically. And CCA particularly, this is one of the reasons also why we work very closely with CCA, because they really offer kind of top level service, as good as we've seen with any different law firms, like top law firms in Portugal, but tend to be very reasonable on pricing as well. So we have found that our clients tend to be very happy with the value, I would say, that CCA has been able to provide to our clients typically. Lawyer fees. Is there a charge to join today? There's no charge to join today as such, except, again, all the different things that we're talking about. And again, think about it, right? Usually from an investor standpoint, if you decide to move forward, it is a bit of a lengthy process, right? We're talking about probably 4 weeks if you're the most organized, 6 to 8 weeks more realistically to get onboarded into the fund to complete your investment. We need to open a bank account. You need to send a number of documents. In the end, you have to think about this as once you're in, and you're in a pathway to citizenship. You're going to get your passport and all your family after 5 years. So all the verification, all the documents that need to be provided, all of this happens now. So this is why, if you do decide to move forward, the next 4 to 6 weeks are a time where it's a bit lengthy. It's not the most exciting part, right? You need to gather documents, send them in. It's not the highlight of the process, right? Unfortunately, but it is a part of it. But then remember that from there, it's just a pathway up until citizenship. I'm interested in purchasing a small property for a bed and breakfast versus a hotel. So on that front, again, if you're interested in purchasing a hotel, I'm sure that CCA can help because they're a very established law firm on transaction side. So more than happy to connect you with CCA. That being said, this will not qualify for Golden Visa purposes, right? Because you're not able to buy a property. It has to be done through a fund. And then a question about fund returns are guaranteed. So that's a great question. So we're a private equity fund, right? So in terms of this, we're not able, first of all, by law, we're not able to guarantee, we're under supervision of the CMVM, which is the equivalent of the SEC in Portugal. We're not able to guarantee returns as such. What we can do is we can give you, of course, all the data about our past performance, which is currently above what would allow us to already double the investment during this course of time. That's the first thing. And the other thing is it's really about the risk profile, right? So we think that our return profile is attractive, but more than that, we believe that it's the risk return profile that's really, really attractive, because we think that the risk profile is very low. And this is the thing that's really interesting, right? Because we're only buying asset-backed in distressed. We're only buying in areas that are appreciating a lot. We have a lot of expertise in doing turnaround of distressed hotels. So it's really about understanding what is the risk return of the investment and what are you really looking for, what kind of risk return appetite do you have for your investments. Back to the other side, the fund's past performance and how long has the fund been in operation. So VIDA currently has about a bit more than 4 years of existence. We've done a number of deals already in Portugal. And this is the second fund that is of VIDA specifically. Now, previously to VIDA, we have extensive experience in doing this. I personally have been working in doing turnaround of distressed hotels for about 10 years now. And I've had the chance to personally be leading the development and redevelopment of over 100 hotels around the world, all with a similar focus. Existing operating hotels that are underperforming, that are distressed, we buy them, reposition them, put them back out to the market. And a lot of that has been done in Portugal. So to the extent to which you have any questions on this, I'm more than happy to discuss it. Please feel free to reach out. I think we're going to take these last 2 questions, and then I think I'm out of breath and need a bit of water. So, do you recommend already submitted and waiting clients to refresh their application ASAP to speed up? This is on the back of AIMA updates issues.
Yes. You should gather the documents and do the resubmission ASAP so that the process starts moving. We have done that. I mean, we have a very, very long list of clients. We are doing that process for all of them. And we, for some that we have resubmitted, we already have a booking for biometrics. So yes, you should do that.
Okay. And then the last one that I have here, what is the average deal size per hotel? It's a great question. So usually on a deal size level, we're looking at approximately 8 to 12 million of acquisition, and in total deal size, I would say between 10 to 15, which means equity, because we're doing 50% LTV, about half of that, right? So that gives us basically a diversification of about 4 to 5 hotels per fund, which we believe is enough to get diversification for risk purposes, risk management purposes. But it's also a very achievable amount and allows for us to still be very, very focused on the asset management side, being able to keep the lead on all of the hotels, basically. So with that, I would like to, first of all, thank Thomas. Thank you very much, Thomas, from CCA for joining us today. It's been a pleasure to have you. Thank you for all the knowledge and expertise you were able to share with us. And also a big thank you to everyone who joined the call with all the very pertinent questions that we had from everyone. So my invitation again is, if anyone has any further questions, whether that be on the investment side, on the immigration side, on both of it, any of it, please feel free to reach out to us. We'll be more than happy to do a more detailed and more in-depth conversation with you. And if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out. So with that, thank you very much. Thank you, Thomas, and wishing a lovely day and evening to the rest of everyone. Thank you very much.
Thank you.